Welcome to Comics with Gratitude. I'd like to introduce the fabulous McDonald, aka Lemon. Thank you so much for joining this show. Now, Lemon, you started Singapore's very first proper comedy club. In fact, that's where I met you when I went for my very first kind of baptism by fire, trial by fire, midlife crisis. I got to do a stand-up and talk and have no boundaries about whatever I'm going to share, basically about my medical examination. You were there. I believe all comics have to bomb at some point. That was my first time. I've had a presenting background, but comedy is quite something else. And you've been in Singapore for a very long time as well. And you're also a comedian, but you have a very colorful background and history. So do you mind maybe sharing with us your journey of like, maybe how did you get to Singapore? How did it all start?
Well, that actually, the first time I did comedy, I was 19, and I wasn't very good at all. And I actually had a bit of a local dialect in Canada's, which was kind of like a slurred dialect. So I actually had to unlearn that before I could become a proper comedian. Then I got a job on a cruise ship as a comedian. That's a very strange job because when you bomb, you have breakfast with them the next day. So
nowhere to run and hide.
It's very, but it was still fun. It was fun. It was fun, and you had to do a lot of jokes that were about like where to get the audience involved and participating. They love those jokes. So, but then I actually ended up focusing primarily on my career. So I was an enterprise software sales guy and for like the multinationals. And I got transferred with my company out to Singapore. And I actually, I started climbing through the ranks because as a public speaker, as a comedian, I was really good at presenting. And I had a background in sales, and sales is just psychology, just the way that comedy is psychology. And then one day I was probably here, it was 2011, and I actually went to watch a comedy show in Blue Jazz. And I was just like, wow, they actually have a comedy here in Singapore. So I said to my wife, I would like to try that again. And she's like, sure. So I went up to the guy after the show, and it was Jonathan Atherton who was putting on the show. And he's like the grandfather of comedy in Singapore. He's the one who brought any kind of comedy to Singapore. And he passed away a couple of years ago, but a great guy and an amazing comedian. So he introduced me to Umar Rana, who runs Comedy Masala. And Comedy Masala is just in its early days. And I got to admit, if Jonathan is the grandfather, then Umar is the godfather of comedy. He actually started the careers of all the big names you see now, like with Rishi, Budrani, and Sharul, and Jinx, and just to name a few. And so he really actually brought comedy to the masses. And so I actually signed up for the open mic at Comedy Masala. And my first time there, I wasn't bad. It was okay. And then the second time I went up was the worst experience
I want to know
I've ever had.
how bad and why is it so like, I love, because we always talk about the highlights. Oh, this went so well, but actually the reality, there's a lot of that doesn't really go so well. And you have to have such thick skin to continue to be in this game. Can you tell us about what happened? Why was it the worst?
Well, I decided to change my comedy style to narrative comedy, where you're actually telling a story and you're trying to like make it funny, and then you have just a killer punchline. And it was dead silence for my entire routine. 5 minutes, nothing, and then I come with my massive punchline, nothing. And I was like, wow. And I was like, okay, thanks. And I walk off stage. Nobody applauded when I walked off stage except
Oh,
one person went, and then someone at the back went, "You
oh
suck,"
dear.
and I was like, "Oh my god!" And Flocka Fuzz was there. He witnessed that, and he actually went up to me and said, "Yo, bro, never do that again, bro." And and, and
Wow.
I was like, it
Oh.
was it was
Is it the
absolutely
walk? I don't think people really
brutal.
get it when they haven't done
So
comedy, that when you stand on stage for 5 minutes, it's a bloody long time. And the only validation you get from people are
yeah,
them clapping, laughing, or, giving you some kind of approval and
yeah.
validation. And it is like the walk of shame. It does feel that way because in the situation,
Oh,
it's different from public speaking where, you're doing PowerPoint slides, and to have someone then heckle you as well. I mean, it's like like a episode of like Jerry Seinfeld. Do you know what I mean? Like it's like it's awkward, but there's
yeah,
pain in it. But at the same time, did
yes.
you feel like that helped you grow in your art and your approach?
Well, actually, it did, and immediately as well, because I
Yeah.
took all my jokes and threw them out, and
Mm,
thought I'm not ever doing these jokes
yeah.
again. I don't even
Mm,
remember what the jokes were, to be honest. And then I came back the next week, and I had my keytar,
yeah.
which is
Also
the
keyboard,
keyboard
guitar.
that you wear, and I had a bass sound on it, and I
Oh,
just started doing porn jokes with the bass guitar behind it, and everybody it got a huge laughs. And so I thought, oh, I think I'm onto something here. So I kept that up, and I did that for about
mm,
maybe 6 months, and I got my first tight 5 minutes together, and then that went on to like 10, and then I did my first 20, and then I started putting my guitar down and actually just doing jokes and stuff,
wow.
and they started working as well. And then I started to establish myself, and it all started in 2011. And but by 2014, I was it 2014? Yeah, 2014. I started actually
Mm,
headlining, and I won a
mm,
competition here in Singapore with Magners. Um, I was actually a regular at Comedy Masala, and then around 2016, all of that just kind of started drying up, and by 2017, I hardly had any shows. And then by 2019, they had the Maryline was open. But if I got 2 spots per month,
mm.
I would be lucky. So I didn't have the
Uh-huh.
Wednesday off to go to Blue Jazz. I always had something. I was always engaged that one evening. And so as it was, when I wanted to get back into comedy, that's when I found out I was a struggle. So I thought about it, and I
Mm,
thought I can't be alone in this, and I thought, in comedy, every year or two,
mm,
there's a brand new batch of comedians, and and they start making their way
yeah.
up and start doing regular shows
Yeah.
and start writing better jokes. And I had noticed that for the last 4 years, back in 2019,
Mm,
that had not happened. So I thought, well, that's because there was kind of like that core group, and they were
I
just
see.
basically dominating all the stage time. So you were either in with that group or you weren't. So I thought we need a club that will. Oh, also, if you went at one club, you weren't
Wow.
allowed to do the other one
But they didn't
because
pay.
they were feuding.
Did they pay the comedians
And
or right?
no,
People need
no,
to know
no,
this
that
is
was
how
what was
open mic
silly.
works. You get on a list,
And
you sign up, and the gatekeeper, the Wizard
yeah,
of Oz, will then pick you to do, to be on stage, and
yeah,
then you would have to shit in your pants, try and write something, coherent and hopefully funny. Spend time coming over, pay for your own cab
that's
fare. You
true.
don't even like get a drink. Um, but it's all for glory, guts for
Yeah,
glory, and it's that passion, right? It's that wanting to do something so much to create, to put yourself out there, and then you did that. But at the same time, it's crazy to hear you have had so much success, and then
sure.
someone like you were having trouble just being on like a regular lineup. let alone someone who's trying to break in.
Yeah. And it was, well, a lot of people don't realize there's actually politics. It's not
Mm,
just in Singapore, globally, in any country you go to, there's a pecking order in
mm,
most comedy communities. So I actually, I once was
mm,
going to Sydney and I called one of the local comedy clubs
yeah,
and I asked if I could do 5 minutes, and the guy was very rude, said there was no way. I'd have to come and watch like 4 or 5 times before they even considered me. I tried to
traveling.
explain I was like, I was a professional, but no, they didn't care. And so I actually thought when I opened this, I thought I have to. My
Mm,
wife said you should be a promoter, and so I thought, yeah, but if I do that, I'm kind of at the mercy of
mm,
the venue that I work with. And I've actually had some venues call me up and said they wanted to work in unison with the Lemon Stand and have us do like a second show on a Saturday at their hotel lounge. And I was like, sure. And when I went to see the venue, I thought it'll be a bit challenging, but I thought it's workable. And then the hotel started making crazy demands. I just because I said, you guys can have the
yeah,
food and beverage, I'll have the tickets, I'll bring all
yeah,
the comedians, I'll work the door,
yeah,
I'll actually
yeah.
control
It's
the
barter.
audience,
It's
all of
barter.
that
You
stuff.
bring people
And they
in, they
were
buy
like,
food and drinks,
yeah,
perfect. They
yeah,
wouldn't be there otherwise.
exactly. I
Yeah,
said, I'll handle the advertisement. I said, so, and they were like, well, we'll do ads as well. I said, yeah, but you
mm,
do email ads. We do
yeah,
social media. I said, we'll have a much broader reach. So I said, so doesn't matter what you're
mm,
doing on your end. We'll handle the marketing. And then they said, okay, and this is what you have to guarantee we're going to do with food and drinks.
mm,
And I was like, I'm not
yeah,
guaranteeing you anything. I
yeah,
said, "You called me, and I'm agreeing to try this
yeah.
out for three Saturdays."
Yeah.
And so the whole thing fell apart. They actually wanted
So
the
what are
door
you doing
revenue
it
on
for
top of it.
charity?
I was like,
And then they can get
"No, it
to,
doesn't work that way." Yeah, well, I mean, they wanted. I would
yeah, but
say they
still,
wanted
like,
about half of the door revenue, and I was
yeah,
thinking, I thought this is going to be crazy. I said, I have to hire somebody. One of my staff has to go and work there and work the door. I said, I had to pay the host. I said, and at the end of it, who knows what I'm going to have in terms of revenue. So yeah, so a lot of you're really when you're a room runner, it's what they call somebody runs a comedy room. When you're a room runner,
mm,
you have like your own challenges. So I thought if I
mm,
do this, I don't want to be a room runner. I want to actually have my own club. And so I looked around, and this is right after COVID ended, and I could not find a place that had a public entertainment license. And every time I tried to apply for one,
why
I would
was, oh,
just be
because it was
immediately
COVID, right? They didn't
rejected.
want people to,
And because
oh, just that.
no, it was after COVID. COVID restrictions had been lifted, but the Singapore government doesn't really give out public entertainment licenses anymore.
They're like,
They
you
just work
cannot
with
have
the
any more
existing ones.
entertainment. You've had
As
enough,
a matter of fact,
Singapore. It's time.
well, I mean, they're looking at it. They're looking at it from like the shady side. Like Orchard
Ah,
Towers is losing all of their public entertainment licenses,
okay,
and so you
okay.
can kind of see why they're doing it. And so they don't want these places to actually keep going, these shady
Fair enough.
KTVs and stuff. So anyway, but the place that I was actually taking over, I found a place that used to be a
Wonderful.
shady
Great.
KTV. And so, yeah. So I actually went in and I pitched to the hotel. They liked the idea. They helped me apply for the public entertainment license, and that's how I got it. And once I did that, then it was just a matter of doing the renovations, buying the furniture, buying the sound system, buying the lights, setting everything up. It's quite a expensive
Yeah.
expenditure opening it up. And in the first year, you're going to lose money. It's not that you won't make money; it's you're going
Wow.
to lose money. So, and that first year was tough. I
Oh,
lost 150,000 that first year. And in our second year, we finally started breaking even. So that's where
oh
I'm sitting
God.
right now. We've been open 2.5 years, and we're finally sitting in a position. Well, not
Yeah.
quite 2.5, almost 2.5, and we're sitting in a position where I'm now
Wow.
breaking even regularly. So though we did have a bit of a slip back in July, just a bit under, but now we're actually
Oh my
going maybe a couple
gosh.
thousand over. So now not making money hand over foot, but I now realize that once we hit that tipping point, it'll be a successful club, and it'll become like the focal point of comedy in I'm hoping not just Singapore but also Southeast Asia. So because it'll be
Mm.
there are some really great clubs in Hong Kong. They have a great one, Takeout Comedy. They've been around 20 years. There's also, well, they closed down the crack house in KL, and
Like,
there was a
no,
terrible
they
thing
call
that
themselves the
happened
crack
there. Do you
house.
know about this? Yeah, yeah, it was the comedy crack house. It was the comedy crack,
Yeah.
but it was
Okay.
just
Yeah, I guess
just
so.
crack jokes, right? So, but they had a really terrible thing happen where they were doing an open mic.
Did
Some
she?
girl showed up in a hijab, and she was they were like, wow, that's the first time somebody's doing comedy in hijab. But while she was doing it, then she took her hijab off and she had like a mini skirt and a blouse underneath. And
Oh, so
so, of course, that
she
was
stripped her
not
hijab off.
acceptable by the Malaysian government. She
Do you
took
not
everything off. Like she had like
and a
a mini
small like a
skirt and the
crop top,
blouse
like a
underneath.
bra top? Also, she
Not a
had a
crop
proper
top, but
blouse,
like a
like what
blouse.
I would wear to a
And
comedy club and a skirt.
yeah,
Obviously, under the
yeah,
religious,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, under the
And
religious.
but like a short skirt. Yeah, so they did not like that at all, and they took it out on not just her,
That's so
but
unfair.
also the club
So
owner.
unfair.
And so, yeah,
And you
and
can't
but
ask the comedian, like,
yeah, I
are you
have to
going
admit
to
that
strip?
isn't
Like,
fair because
you don't know what's
he
going to
didn't
happen.
know
You're not
what was
going
going to
to be
happen.
holding them accountable and
Yeah,
saying, like, you have to sign this form and you must not strip. Who makes these things up? Like nobody, and I guess that's because you're dealing with a Muslim, like with that context of religious, very, very strongly Islamic country where it's religion before nation to a
yeah.
certain extent. Is
But I mean that's their right to
right.
do that, and so you do have to actually follow
Mm.
uh, those tenets that they actually outlined for you. But I found it very unfair that Rizal Van Geisel actually got caught up in
They didn't
it
do anything.
because I mean
Yeah.
he didn't know she was going to do that, so it wasn't like he was supporting it. So and after it happened, I got to say I've been waiting to I watch all the
Yes.
shows since I'm hosting most of them. And if somebody does something really
Yeah.
inappropriate, I'll pull them right off stage. We were doing our this one show
Yes.
called
Yeah.
Punchline, where you tell one joke and then it's rewritten
Yeah.
by a panel of experts. And there was one guy who got up there and did a really
What was it
inappropriate
about?
joke, and I didn't approve of it at all. It was,
Is
but
it
he
like?
only did the one
Yeah.
joke.
Yeah.
And I went up to him when he came off stage, and I said, if you had done that where you actually continue to do comedy, I
Mm,
said, I would have thrown the music up. I would have walked up on stage and
wow.
pulled the mic out of your hand and walked you off the stage. I said, there are just some
Is it
lines that
what topic
you
is it?
really don't cross. And
Can
it's
you
hard
tell
to
me
say
what
that as a
topic is it?
promoter.
Like so that we all are in the know.
It was about the
Oh, okay.
Holocaust. It was a Holocaust joke. And it wasn't
Okay.
even a funny Holocaust joke. It was a really bad Holocaust. It
I
was
just wanted
really in
to
poor
kind of
taste.
chime in
And
there. The thing is, I mean, I'm not defending his behavior, but I think there's also a significant disconnect. So obviously in Singapore, we learn about the Holocaust, like we know about it generally as of the world, learning about the
of
history of
course,
it. But I do sense and I do know that it's infinitely more sensitive when you're in Europe, just by virtue of the fact that because my husband's from the UK,
true.
and I visit, and the curriculum that they have, the way they talk about the war, it's so close to them. Germany's like next door, I think the way to describe it is the Holocaust would be like the version of what the Japanese invasion was like to Singaporeans. That's that personal kind of like, oh, this happened, like we learn about it and obviously we're educated, but I can imagine that person is just kind of like, doesn't feel that kind of personal connection to it as that Japanese invasion, where it's really quite scary. Like my grandmother lived through that. Like there are stories to, be told. So, but that doesn't discount him from, I don't know what he said, but I guess, sometimes we do know where the OB markers are. Like I used to work in the newsroom, you don't show dead bodies when there's a cyclone, and like the things you wouldn't cut in the newsreel. So I believe people would have some sense. Where are the markers in your
And you do have to step up and immediately shut down anything that's going to be like I won't let people actually single out particular people in the government and things like that. Like, and the funny thing is, almost nobody does that ever. They like when people make Lawrence Wong jokes, they're actually making jokes about how much they like him. And they say, "Oh, he's cute," and I always say, I refer to him as Larry Wong. So instead of Lawrence Wong, and I'm like, he doesn't look like a Lawrence. He looks more like Larry, like he, and and I love those jokes because it really shows that, you have like you can appreciate that the work that they do and things like that. So I do take the rules and regulations that they outline very seriously. I don't want to actually make sure people are not terribly offended. Now, if it's just a dirty joke or a rude joke, it's subjective. So there's kind of like a real balancing act when you're promoters. So you're like, where do you draw the line? Because they can just turn around and say, hey, this was just me expressing my art. And I think, well, if you actually had a series of, say, fart jokes, then that would be you doing it. But if you just come up and just start saying ridiculous stuff, there is no art to it. You're just kind of, you have this kind of verbal vomit coming out and assaulting the audience. And we don't need to. If we want art, it should be artistic. And while art is always subjective, there's just some things that we won't allow at the lemon stand. And so, but if it's people saying, "Oh, it's rude," and they used foul language, yes, that's why we have an 18 plus age restriction and a door policy that is strictly enforced. So, and I've had people show up with, teenagers, and I've like, I'm sorry, I got to see your ID, and they're like, well, can't you just like, and I'm like, there's no way I can do that, and I said, I apologize, but I give them a refund right on the spot, and apologize, that they can't come in. So, because hey, these rules are put out there for a reason. If you're a teenager, then you didn't actually, and you're going along with your parents. Yeah, you can say it was your parents' right, but it's not their right to flout the rules like that. So I have to be very careful in terms of the styles of comedy. So foul language, I have no problem with. Sexual content,
it's staple in the
it's all just jokes.
I think I participated on the lineup like literally every time I'm there. Because when they are men, there are certain topics which they veer towards, and there always seem to be among.
And it always seems to be their anatomy. They always talk about.
And fair enough. I think it's a safe space where people feel like they can sort of, I guess, let it out. Because Singapore is obviously very, we have an atmosphere of control where, it helps to run things really well. But at the same time, there is a pressure valve, and I feel like there are people aching to come out and just let loose, It's not in our cultural DNA,
A little bit, I agree. Yeah, I agree. I think that some of the best audiences I've ever done are with Singapore. Though I heard a really interesting comment just last night. It was a comedian who had actually gone to another country, had done comedy, and he said, "Wow, all my jokes that are
Mm.
just kind of like lukewarm here,
Seriously?
they killed there. Everybody lost their
Why?
minds." And I was like, I said, "Wow, really?" He said, "Yeah, you know," he said, but he said Singapore is very uh, they're very careful in terms of like what they respond to. So if you can do well here,
Wow.
you can do well in other countries because they're a lot more reserved. That might not be the case in, say, the United States, where they've kind of swung to the opposite end of that, where you can't make any inappropriate comments. So you can't make jokes about men, you can't make jokes about women, you can't make jokes about race, you can't make. And the thing is, in Singapore, we have no problem, you know, making jokes about different races because we
Yes.
all know it's all fun. So it's
Yeah.
just they're all just jokes. So and Singaporeans are great at that. But and I've seen, well, I haven't seen, but I have heard from comedians that um, if they say certain material, the only people that they can really
Mm.
pick on are white men.
Yeah.
So
Is that right?
there you go. So as a matter of fact, there was that
Yeah.
Singaporean comedian, Jocelyn Chia.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think it was at the beginning of this year. Was that the beginning of this year? And she was. Maybe it was even last year. I don't remember. It seems so long ago. And she was actually caught up because somebody recorded her, or
Uh,
she posted a video of her doing Malaysian
oh,
airline jokes.
oh, that's
And
really, that was like international headline
yeah,
news. That's,
yeah. But the
she's
funny
not really
thing is
Singaporean,
that
by the way. She
if
like
the
left and she has a
government,
US citizenship, you know. I know,
oh yeah,
but we
but
don't
she's
want to
still,
claim
I mean,
her.
she was
We
born
don't
and
want to
raised
claim
here.
her now
Her
because she
parents are
did.
still here.
It was
Oh no, no. I see. The thing
so
is, that
she
was
didn't make
really
a joke
overblown,
about
and
white men. She made a joke about Malaysian Airlines not landing, and I think it's still very painful because there are families out there
yeah,
where I guess they've not been able to solve the mystery of the plane vanishing, right?
I gotta admit
Yeah,
that was a strange
and
event
then
that
one got
happened.
shot
So,
down by
and I
the
know it's kind of
Ukraine
close
like
to home,
rebels.
but she was
Yeah,
she was in the United States in a different venue.
yeah,
She
yeah.
was actually just doing her job, and so trying to apply our standards to somebody in another country,
I see your point.
I don't
I
agree
see your
with
point.
that.
But we
I
live in
think
the world
that's
age of like internet where kind
yeah,
of everything is porous and seamless. But I see your point where in the context of where she was at, it wasn't that offensive. But again, it's that same thing
exactly.
about the Holocaust, right? So you call that guy out. So then we are like calling her out where, and also there's another question. I mean, isn't all publicity good publicity? Like that has like catapulted her, right?
Well, it actually really helped her career. But the thing is that I actually heard some comedians from KL who were here at the Lemon Stand, and they did jokes about Jocelyn Chia's jokes, and they were funny. And I asked them about it afterwards. I said, "Yeah, was this?" They're like, "No, no, it wasn't offensive. It was all blown out of proportion. She was just a comedian on a stage in the US. It somehow went viral, and then everybody felt obligated to say something about it. But they didn't see it as like, they just saw it as, okay, it's just comedy. And I thought a really good,
I
healthy
guess so.
attitude.
There are different
You
ways
know,
to look
like
at like
I-
there's no one narrative for this, right?
yeah,
It's kind of like there are people who are seriously offended, and
yeah,
that's why you do comedy as well. If you're offended, and I think it's good that if you're offended and you have a reaction, that means there's a new conversation, right? If everybody just goes, yeah, fine, right?
isn't
If
that a
not, there's
good point?
nothing to talk about.
Yes, that's true. Like you should be able to have
Yeah,
conversations about these things and continue actually discussing them and bring
yeah,
up nuances and things like that. But just to condemn
yeah,
somebody without the conversation, I think that's actually just as bad as like
yeah.
the Holocaust joke the guy did. And I just went
Mm,
up to him and said, "That come on, that was inappropriate. It was
mm,
a very
mm.
childish, juvenile joke." And so I said, you know, you only got to do that one
Yeah.
joke, but I'm not going to have you up there doing that again. So, so yeah, so, but the thing is like, so
Mm,
was I within my right? Well, yeah, it's the club and I don't want, and when he told the joke,
mm,
I've got to admit,
mm,
it was just a bad joke. And the fact is,
mm,
had it been nuanced and
mm,
funny, and I have heard Holocaust
mm,
jokes that were nuanced
yeah.
and funny by Jewish comedians in Canada, and thought they were, you know, thought,
Mm,
wow, they really pulled that one off. Like I once, Louis
mm.
C.K. was on Saturday Night Live, and he did a segment in his opening monologue
Oh my
that
God.
was rape jokes, and
Wow.
he actually pulled it off.
Wow.
And it was really well done. It was very funny, and I thought, boy, he really brought up an interesting point there. You know, like, sure, it's a horrible, horrible crime, and shouldn't be. It should be immediately shut down. But the way he actually
Mm,
phrased it, the way he entered the conversation, it was really very, very
mm,
intelligent and very funny. And I thought, wow, I thought the fact that he pulled that one off is just amazing as well. And
yeah.
on a stage
I
like
think
Saturday Night
I
Live,
think they
doing
probably
that
know
in
what
the
they're
opening
doing if he
monologue,
gets to
I have to admit,
if he gets to do that on such a big platform. I think part of it is where you're normalizing really
oh
tough
yeah,
conversations
exactly.
and things that are really hard to talk about. You use
Yes,
comedy, you use humor, and that's I think a lot of the reasons why people get into it, because you kind of have liberty where this is your stage. You can say something outrageous. You know, people don't judge you for it in that, oh, you're a comedian, that's why you say what you say. And but at the back of
agree.
it, I mean, there's a lot of healing happening because we're able to laugh about, you know, not make light of it, but laugh about whatever difficult suffering. Because a lot of,
Agree.
I mean, my stuff that I'm doing, it's like therapy. I'm going up on stage. I'm talking about being a mixed race child of Lebanese and Chinese, Cantonese. I'm making fun of like two different cultures. I'm making fun of like all the difficult hardships I've had, you know, growing up without a dad, growing up, you know, in a
Yeah,
dysfunctional family. And it's just like, I feel like the moment you get over yourself and you're able to share your story, it's like you're giving others the permission to be okay with their dysfunction as well. Maybe perhaps you can share your perspective,
I
you know?
agree. I think that actually when people are talking are up on stage doing comedy, a lot of times
Yeah.
it's something very, very personal. I remember there was one comedian who went up stage and said, "You know, I got diagnosed as clinically depressed." And he said, and then I thought, clinically? And he started going into these jokes about it. And he said, when I saw the bill, that's when I was like, okay, now I'm kind of depressed. And, and so, and I thought, but the thing was,
Yeah.
I knew he was telling the truth because he's basing it on an experience that happened to him. I actually did in next month, I'll be doing I was invited by the Urology Society to do comedy for their, I guess, Christmas party or they're having a gala event. And I was asked to be the comedian. I actually, 3.5 years
Wow.
ago, was diagnosed with prostate cancer, was actually
Wow.
operated on. I'm cancer free. And so when I was asked to
Oh,
actually
it's
be part of that, I was
amazing.
like, this is going to be great. Because
Oh
I
my
have an
God.
entire 30-minute set
Wow.
about that. And the two doctors who actually, the one who diagnosed me and the one who actually performed the operation, both of them will be
Oh my
there and I'll
God.
be
That is
roasting
so
them
cool. That
both.
is like,
So,
wow.
so I thought that was really great. And of course, you know, it's really nice to. I actually got a chance to do this a shorter version of this set at the Esplanade during COVID, and it got really big laughs. And you know, and I had to write it all
Yes.
down, submit it to the government as
Yes.
we do when we're in a big venue like that. And I actually had some jokes that were, you know, that mentioned the government. And then of course they had no issues with them at all because they were funny jokes and nuanced and clever, right? So I thought,
Mm,
you know, that's where comedians get a lot of their jokes. They get it from what's
they're
happening in the
suffering.
news. They get what's happening in the world in general. They
Yeah.
get it from personal experiences. And so when you make fun of something, you're not, you said it
Yeah.
actually best. You're not making light of it. You're
Yeah.
actually finding a way to cope. And that's why I thought when I see people up there doing rude jokes and stuff like that, you know what? They're just blowing off steam. They're trying to be clever. They're trying to connect, and people get it. People do get it, and Singaporeans especially, they get what the joke's about, and they don't get so easily offended. The only time I've heard of people getting really offended usually happens in the United States when people are getting canceled and they, they'll, I remember, probably 1 or 2 years ago, there was
Yeah.
some guy
Yeah.
he was an actor in the TV series Flash, and he had posted something
Yeah.
in his Twitter feed
Oh dear.
10 years earlier, and somebody had gone through all his posts
Offensive.
and they found something that was,
Mm.
it wasn't, he didn't say anything. He just actually had a couple of weird comments, and then they canceled him for it and he got fired off the
Wow.
show. And I remember thinking 10 years ago, I thought he was 28 at the time. I thought he would have
Yeah,
been
that's when you say some
18 when he
stupid shit
posted
because your
these,
prefrontal cortex is not even
slightly,
developed to your 25. Yeah.
yeah,
No.
yeah, and you're not even the
No,
same
every
person
7
at
years your
18
cells
as you are at
regenerate. You're like a
28.
completely new person. I just want to hold that thought where I mean, I think it's so amazing
Yeah.
that number one, you've gone through something like that and you're able to kind of like come out of the ashes and like, say, I'm going to name this to tame this. I'm going to tell everybody about this and not kind of walk around and, because obviously I think surviving something like this, a cancer diagnosis, it's a big thing. It's not something which, and I feel like as people age, this is super relatable as well because you're willing to, I guess, take your pain and turn it into art,
Well, that's a way of putting it. I mean, though, I actually say it just allows me to do 30 minutes of
You know
penis
what's really
jokes.
funny? I recently got a colonoscopy, so I'm going to do the next set at your club. I tried it out. I did my colonoscopy stand up, like a 5 minute. They found 2 polyps in my colon and 1 in my esophagus. And then I did a song to spoof it. I know.
In your
Dude,
esophagus, how
can you
far up did
imagine
they
the doctor was
go?
like, well, stick this one down as well. Since you're going this way, we'll go that way. I'm like, okay. And it was best decision ever because I thought it should be fine. And so they picked up another polyp. So I did a song and dance. I literally have a spoof, like a ukulele song about it. Then I tap dance on top of it to finish off this colonoscopy 5 minute set. So I really do. I feel like, kindred spirits where, you have something like, it's like public service, like health announcement. The next thing you know, I'll probably go and, I'm trying to get people above 40 to just go and get themselves checked out, because I obviously have friends and I was very grateful I did it because, they took the polyps out and that's it. I don't have to worry for the next 5 years until I get for my next check.
Yeah, then they test them and they always come
5
back.
years.
They always
Yeah.
come back negative. Yeah, so I did the exact same thing after my prostatectomy. I actually had a colonoscopy
We're
because
old,
at
man.
the time I was in my
This
50s,
is like
and
the
so
comics of gratitude.
well, actually, what was funny was that when I was getting examined beforehand, and there was a very young gentleman there, very
Like
young,
18?
maybe about this tall on me, and wearing a mask. And I said to the colorectal surgeon, I said, "Oh, is this a resident?" He said, "No, he's a medical student." I said, "A medical student." I said, "Oh, wow." He said, "Yes, would be his very first examination sitting in on. Would you mind?" And I thought, and I was like, "You really want his first
Wow.
examination to be with me?" So I thought, this is going to be fun. So I just looked at him. I said, "I have no problem with that." And I looked at him and said, "Kid, welcome to my asshole." So, 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 and the funny thing is, medical personnel aren't really that funny.
They're like, why
So they
did he
weren't
say
quite
that?
sure
Why
what
is
to
he not
do.
embarrassed?
And yeah, oh, exactly. So afterwards, I went and I shook his hand. I said, "Hey, you did really good today, kid." And then I looked at it and said, "Hey, didn't you have a ring on that finger?"
Did he get it?
So, He was like,
Did
no,
you're
we're not
like,
allowed to wear dress. And I just
yes.
laughed. I said, I'm kidding.
Oh my
I'm kidding.
God.
Oh, and
Oh my
okay, and
gosh.
here, have this one.
But
You
it's so
know,
cool though.
so yeah, so I found it like,
Yeah.
so I thought that was very funny. And the doctor, I said, you
Yeah.
probably have done
Yeah.
like 1,000 colonoscopies before. And he said, I do
Yeah.
1,000 per
Wow.
year. I said, what? I said, wait a minute. If you work the average 220 days per year, like most people, I said, that would mean that you're doing three to
Oh
four
God.
colonoscopies per day.
That's crazy.
And he said, yeah, that sounds about right. And I said, that is amazing. And then I looked at this med student and I said, hear that, kid? You got 4 years as an undergrad, 4 years in med school, 2 years a
Oh my
resident. And when you're
God.
done, you're a plumber.
Yes, and I also made my BTS jokes like the bottoms that sizzle when and like I don't know, but it's really quite funny. Where it's a profession where everybody's like, oh, we know
Yeah.
what it is
So,
about, but then like obviously there's a little bit of song and dance about it. Everybody's like a bit awkward, but when you break the ice, like everybody's
yeah.
like, this is just normal. This is just what humans do.
Yeah, and like people, I also
Mm,
find it's a great
mm,
way to cope with death and
yeah.
grief and stuff like that. Like when 9/11 happened, I thought what was the craziest thing weren't the jokes; it was the
Mm.
the fake photos that had been photoshopped
And fake
and stuff
photos
like
of what
that.
specifically?
And but the jokes coming out around that time were very funny, and you could tell that they were coming from a place that it's
What was
just
the
another
photo
way
that
to
was
heal.
digitally altered?
So
What was that?
that one where the guy is standing up there on the roof of the World Trade Center, and beneath him you can see a plane that looks like it's about
God.
to hit the building. And they said, "Oh, this camera was found in the rubble." And I thought, and of course I remember
Uh,
it's made all the rounds, and right away you thought, well,
yeah,
this is fake, obviously, because
yeah.
it's the wrong time of day. And there's no based on where
Mm,
the sun was, the plane was coming in the wrong direction. It was really easy to debunk. Now
oh,
it's not
AI
so
is just
easy to
incredible. The
debunk
deep
with
fakes are
the
very, very fake. Um,
oh yeah, the deep fakes are really great, but they're also very funny when people do them properly.
they have a good
So
sense of humor about it.
so
I just
there
wanted
are
to take
some
you
very,
a
very
few steps
funny
back,
deep fakes
Lemon. Like,
real.
when did you? Because you obviously had a point where you quit your job and you decided, I can do this full time. You had enough money to lose to go like, we can turn this
Yeah.
around. And at which point were you like, because obviously comedy is making a revival now. It's like I think more than ever, like than 10 years ago, it's like a proper thing, right? People can make a career out of it. You can aspire the roadmap to success. Um, but it wasn't like that before, I guess, when you started it. So, can you tell me what were the motivations of you like actually getting up on stage? And then when did you decide I can actually quit my job because I'm losing money in this bar and it sounds great that, obviously you're starting to break even now, but I'm sure that's like a really hard, like, time.
Well, I have to hand it to my wife because she's the one. I had quit my last IT job. I just absolutely hated it, and I was in corporate. And I said to her, listen, I have the money and the time. I don't want to go back into corporate." And she said, "Why don't you be a promoter?" And and that's when I thought, I do want to be a promoter so I can actually provide the
Mm,
venue where we can have
mm,
people who want to try comedy for the first time,
mm,
who want to actually develop their comedy routine, who actually want to
mm,
start working their way up the ladder and try to be successful. And I thought, and they couldn't do that with the current environment. Now, COVID shut me down for 2 years. I was about to start when COVID hit, and then it was just a matter of waiting and then starting and then having as many open mics and time available so that people could develop. Because the
yeah.
only way you're going to develop is by going on stage. You can't even write
Yeah.
new jokes without
Yeah,
going on
that's them.
stage. So
Yeah.
because you have to try them out on somebody. So that's, to me, that was kind of like my
Mm,
main mission. My main mission was I want to provide an area where
mm,
we can actually start the community again, and we can start
mm,
those new crop of comedians that are up and coming. And
mm,
every year we'll keep getting more and more of them that will just keep coming in.
mm,
And we've had some amazing
mm,
comedians who are new
mm.
and very funny. There's Joseph Michael, who I call him Joe Mike on stage, and all his jokes are sex jokes, and they're funny.
He's got a
They are
lane.
so funny because they're so relatable. And then we have Johan, who's about to do his first
Wow.
30 minutes ever this Saturday at the Lemon Stand. I am so proud that he actually started off, as a very timid person, but
Mm,
then just started having great jokes and being very funny, writing, being very clever. And as it
brilliant.
is, now he's gotten to the pinnacle where he's
Wow.
going to do his first headline. So so seeing somebody go through that journey is, for me, a remarkable thing. I absolutely,
Mm,
I'm on cloud nine when they get up there and are just so successful and funny. So it's really great that way. And so
mm,
that was one of the big main motivators, so that we could provide really great entertainment with really funny people here in Singapore. And Singaporeans
mm,
are very funny people. They
mm,
really are. They have great sense of humor. That was my main motivator, and it has worked. What's odd is that there's still that you have to be a
mm.
certain level to go to
Yeah.
the other clubs. So people start at my club until they're good enough to go to the place to the other places. And I
Yeah.
thought, I don't mind that at all,
Yeah.
because that was the reason I started it, because somebody
Yeah.
has to provide a venue where they can actually get up there for the first
Mm,
time. And it's painful. But one thing I love about Singaporeans, they are so
mm,
encouraging. They are so patient. So when I actually say this
mm,
person has never been on stage before, it is their first time getting up, be warm and generous with your laughter. Let's welcome the person out. They are. They start applauding. They, like, if the person kind of forgets where they are and they're like, and they start stammering, they start to applaud and
mm.
encourage them. I love seeing stuff like that. And last night we had, it was a pretty small crowd, only 14 people last night. What an amazing
That's
show.
like on a Tuesday.
Um, D-Roy, one
That's
of
like
our,
on a Tuesday, right? That's a
I'm
Tuesday
sorry?
night.
Yeah, on the Tuesday, yeah. But D-Roy, who's one of the up and coming comedians, wow, he was so funny yesterday. It was, and he did most of
Wow.
it just by
Wow.
talking to the crowd, doing crowd work. It was amazing to see. Also, 2 weeks ago, we did a Friday show where all the comedians got up and they were just killing one after the other, one after the other. One of the best shows I've ever seen was actually at the Lemon Stand, and it was a time where we had, I think, on like 12 comedians that night. Every single
Wow.
comedian killed. The audience, we had a room of about maybe 50 people. The audience was laughing hysterically at everything. And there was one comedian who he really struggles to connect with the audience and with his joke writing. And in the green
Yeah.
room, just off the stage. Just for people watching, a
Like a
green room is
holding
where
area
comedians
for
prepare just
comedians
before they
to
go on
get
stage.
together
And
in
he was,
anticipation before
yeah,
you announce our name and we're like shit 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 we have to come out now and then we're like
exactly.
high-fiving each other. It's a great
Yeah. So,
community, and it's a nice space, and I love that you have that, because most places are not a comedy club. They will not have a green room. Like it's a special
yeah,
room just for us to chill
yeah,
before you call us in. Yes, like a
that
proper
leads right
backstage.
onto the stage. Yeah. And and this comedian, Gary Tan, was actually in the green room, and he
Yeah,
was just panicking. He was like, everybody
I'm
is
gonna
doing
be like,
so well.
yeah.
I'm going to go out there. I'm going to bomb again. Oh, I thought, oh, it's terrible. So he actually got up there, and and his first thing was like, oh, listen, I'm a Grab driver, and and then while I was doing it, this woman started heckling him,
Oh dear.
and because she was drunk, and the whole audience knew she was drunk because she was like shouting out and stuff like that. And then he just looked at her and said, "I feel like I'm driving a Grab
Oh.
right
Great. So
now."
he came up with it and he addressed it.
Audience,
He addressed the moment.
and the audience
So
absolutely,
funny.
they
So
laughed
funny.
as much. It was the biggest laugh of the night. Some people actually like stood up and applauded because she had been like kind of interfering with the
Oh
comedians,
wow.
and they had been doing an amazing job putting her down. And but that one was the creme de la creme, and Gary
Funny.
Kahn absolutely was
That's so
the
cool.
highlight of the entire night. And and what's really awesome is
Mm.
watching comedians who were part of that night. They were standing there at the end, and they weren't saying
Mm.
anything. They just had these big grins on their faces, and they were like, and I was just
Yeah.
thinking, boy, I love seeing that. You know, so it's very rewarding as a promoter to see people go through, start really literally at the bottom and work their way up,
Yeah.
and then start to go to other stages where they get to go perform in front of other people. And that's my goal. I want them to be able to go to all these other places that only
Wow.
take seasoned comedians. Fantastic.
Yeah.
And you know what? They started here. So I don't mind all that stuff at all. So it just encourages me to keep going because without it,
Yeah.
we're going to stagnate. So
Mm.
we have to keep adding comedians like the ones I just mentioned as up and comers. There's some there I could mention actually there's a few who jump to my mind who are right at the beginning of their careers,
There are
and
some people
wow,
I know who are
they are
just,
funny
female
and
comics.
they're
There are
famous.
some people,
They're
yeah, there are
famous.
some outstanding ones, but there are also different types of comedians, people who are perhaps
Yes.
good with public speaking, but people who are just so naturally awkward that actually it doesn't matter what they say. You know who I'm talking about? Like there's like a few, like just like they're so painfully shy, like they seem like recluse, like somebody had dragged them out and they just don't want to be there. And they're those type of characters which I feel like they're born with it. Like they are born with a personality that makes them so kind of relatable, but you feel sorry for them, but they're also really funny. Yeah.
Well, that's kind of Johan. That's kind of Johan.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
half Malay, half Chinese,
Awkward.
and he makes
Awkward. Yeah.
and he makes some
Yeah,
funny,
yeah, yeah,
funny
yeah.
jokes about being half Malay, half Chinese. Yeah, and then he also
Yeah.
has some great observational comedy, and he's very
Mm.
like he
Like someone's
looks
gonna
like
jump him
he's
any
very
moment.
shy, and but he's very funny.
Yeah,
Jonathan
yeah,
Halim is another favorite of mine. He always does this like where he's touching his face, and
yeah.
he's like, "Oh,
And how about
and his
female
jokes
comics?
are
Can
so
you tell me
funny.
about female? Because they'll
He's
be like
very,
watching this,
very
they'll be like,
clever.
he didn't name check me. Where are the women at? Tell me a bit more about like, the LGBTQ or the female comics that comedians who are up and coming now that we should watch for.
Well, okay. There's one comedian who she is head and shoulders above the rest in Singapore. She's one of the best comedians I think in
Absolutely.
Asia.
I think she's a
Sharul
veteran though.
Chana.
She's an absolute
Wow,
veteran. Her
she,
roasting is like, do not cross this lady
she is
because she will
amazing.
like bring down fire on you. I've seen her roast the crowd. She is unbelievable. Her energy though is so awesome.
I have to admit,
Yeah,
watching her
it's
perform
masterclass.
is
Yes,
just a joy.
absolutely.
And her
Yes, yes.
husband's a comedian, Rishi Budrani, and
Yeah.
I mean, he is such a seasoned pro. It's just amazing. But every time I see Sharul
Mm,
get on stage, it's very exciting.
yes,
Sasha Frank,
yes,
she's really rising up there. She did
absolutely.
the
Yes.
Edinburgh Fringe Festival, and which I mean, you're doing
Yeah.
I think what 2 or 3 shows a day for like a month. So when she came
On
back,
fire.
boy, she was so much stronger. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
people went to the
Working that
gym and
muscle.
they're working out, and then you see them like 3 months
Wow.
later, and they're like a lot stronger. So
Wow.
that's what I've
Mm,
seen with some of the female comics,
yeah.
and boy, we need more of
I
them.
will come back. I will do the
Greta, when are you
colonoscopy
coming
set.
back?
So
Uh,
I'll sign up and I'll get my tap shoes
okay,
out. I'll bring my own
okay.
tap board so I don't scuff up your floors. Yeah, and I think I would get myself back in the game again.
That's good. There's another new comedian, by her name is Dania,
Oh
and
wow.
she's really young. She's 19. She's very petite.
Yeah.
There's another one,
Yeah.
Vidya. She's a lawyer. She's another very petite girl. She's a lawyer, and she's starting
Amazing.
out. She's starting to find her feet. Um, oh boy, there was some girl who surprised everybody. We did a
Uh-huh.
comedy competition 2 weeks back, and
Uh-huh.
she decided to enter, and she had
Wow.
never done comedy before.
Wow.
She finished fourth
That's pretty
in
amazing.
the out of
That
23.
it's brutal though.
I was
It's like I've been
I
in one of
couldn't
the
believe it. I
comedy
was just
competition. You have to think very quickly on your feet. You can't prepare anything. That's really like about responding.
well, no, I think no, when you're doing comedy
Oh, right.
competition, you have to be ultra prepared because it's 4 minutes. It is four
Oh, it's not the
minutes, and
punchline one.
it
I
has
thought
to
that
be
was the
your best four
punchline
minutes.
competition. Yeah.
No, not
You
punchline.
just get up and
Punchline, you
freestyle.
don't
Yeah.
think, you just get up there and tell your one joke. And what you're
Yeah.
doing is you're just basically setting up the
Okay.
panel to do jokes about your joke. And that's the whole premise of that show. And
Yeah.
when we have
Yeah.
Jackie Eng, Darren Foong, and Prescott
They're
Gaylord, those three
hysterical.
guys working together,
Yeah.
they can take any joke that anybody has said
Yeah.
and just make it brilliantly funny
And,
just by being themselves, and they
mm,
work really well together. So punchline, I really liked doing that
mm,
part, but there has to be those three guys because they work in concert.
mm.
But the comedy competition is where you have to
Wow.
have a very
Tight.
short 4 minute set that
Mm,
you get up there.
mm,
It has to be tight and
mm.
prepared. And the ones who win are the ones
Wow.
who show up with that tight five. And that's why I actually do the competitions, because I'm trying to actually teach the comedians you must have a
Mm,
tight 5 minutes. It's the very
right.
first thing comedians have to shoot for, that tight five. And if they do that, they'll be able to actually go
Mm,
anywhere and be funny on any stage. And then they start adding and growing from that.
wow.
And then that's how they actually become a comedian. And so I have to do these comedy competitions because I've had some people come out and they'll do a 5 minute set on open mic, and then they'll come back the next week and do a completely different set. And then
Mm,
I
mm,
go back to them and say, "Why didn't you
mm,
do those
mm,
jokes you did last week? They really worked."
mm,
And they'll be like, "Oh no, no, I'm trying new stuff." I'm like, why don't you
mm.
finish some stuff first and then
Yeah.
go on?" I said, that's like having dinner. And while you just sat down to eat and you've had a bite of steak and wow, and then have some vegetables
Mm,
and stuff. And then you're like, let's have dessert. And then you start eating dessert and then you put
yeah.
that aside. And then you go back to eat your meal.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
why don't you actually focus on what you're doing? And then you can have your dessert, and which would be your growth
Yeah.
in
I think people don't really realize
comedy.
what a
So
long time 5 minutes is
I
on
actually do like
stage,
it.
telling jokes, having punchlines, having that rhythm. It takes like, it could take months, right? Just to get that 5 minutes. It's not like, it's completely different from just saying lines and being, it's completely different to craft your own thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Once I
Mm,
found my niche with the guitar, it took me 6 months to get that 5 minutes, and that was
yeah.
fast. That was fast considered. And then after I got that 5 minutes,
Yeah.
the next
Why
15
do we
minutes
do it?
after that came really
So,
quick. After
so how
within a
could you
year and a
explain the
half, I
method
was
of this
doing 20
madness?
minutes.
Why do it? Like if someone were to ask you, it sounds really hard. You're putting yourself under pressure. Why do you need this instant validation from people? There's something really enticing about it, right? There's that immediate feedback where you're making a whole group of people feel so good about themselves. Um, that's the way I see it. How do you see it?
I think it's kind of similar, but I think that a lot of people do it for the
Mm,
same reason they go,
yeah,
skydiving. They're like jumping out of a perfectly good
yeah,
plane with a parachute on your back
yeah,
is really
yeah,
it's just crazy if you
yes.
think about it, but it's exhilarating
When you do it
when you
right,
land on the ground.
yeah,
You're like,
yeah,
wow, we did it. And so Yeah, and then and now in comedy though, if you do it poorly, at least you're alive. You might feel like the
Yeah,
parachute didn't open and you hit the
yeah.
ground at 145 kilometers per hour, but you actually will go, "Phew, okay, that's over." Whereas so I think that
Mm,
some people do it for the thrill, some people do it for
mm,
the self satisfaction.
mm,
Some people do it for the challenge. They
mm.
want to challenge themselves to see if they can actually do this. And it's probably one
Yeah,
of the hardest art forms I think I've ever seen because you're right, you get instant
yeah, absolutely.
validation if you're funny or not. And most of the time,
Exactly.
it's you're not.
Fall on your face,
And
fall,
so,
fall, fall, fall. Maybe get a laugh, fall, 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 fall.
yeah,
Maybe get another
yeah.
laugh. But we do it anyway.
But
Yeah,
it's a
yeah.
great course in perseverance.
And
Like, so
not
do
to
you
take
persevere?
anything
Yes. And the
personally.
ones who
I
always
think it's a
succeed in the
great, great, yeah, character building. Don't take
term.
anything personally, and it'll just help you kind of get over yourself. You know how we think and care about how people are looking at us, and how we care about their thinking about whatever we're doing, and actually they don't care. And that's actually making
Agree.
it rather a thought experiment, an actualization within your body. You know it, and then that actually powers you in your life to make completely different decisions based on how you feel in your body. That's what I see it as when I'm on stage, and I'm like, it was a period of very like eating humble pie, but it really helped me thicken my skin as well. Just get on with it. Nobody cares.
Yeah. It, it means that you really have to think about what you're saying and why you're saying it, what you're doing, and
Yeah,
your flow and your energy and things like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
I'm a very high energy comedian, so and my jokes just I kind of bombard people with my
Mm,
jokes, but that's certainly
mm,
not a very common style.
mm,
Usually
yes.
because I'm a host now,
Yes.
I don't really do the headlines. The ones for the urologist, I'm just doing that as a favor for the society for saving my life. Yeah, but
Fair enough.
I
Yeah.
but people said, "Why don't you headline?" And I
Mm,
was thinking, like, you know what? I would rather give that stage to somebody else, and
yeah.
actually help them, grow as an individual. I don't want to go and do all that stuff anymore. We have some comedians who will just stick to um, they'll stick to just
Yeah.
like regular doing it as an amateur
Exactly.
because their
Exactly.
day
I
jobs
mean,
pay
I think
way
you
too
are also
much.
fathering the next generation. Like this is kind
Sure.
of a purpose and a mission where you're just like you're seeing your purpose
One
and you're
day.
happy to see new up and coming people who would never have stage chance because it's a catch 22. They'll never get to those big stage if they don't actually get an opportunity to bomb. So and also you are a father, so I guess that's kind of like it's in your DNA as well. And you've been in Singapore very long. I guess you're going to be sticking around.
Almost 19 years. Yeah. And the funny thing is, I've actually already looked at what's going to happen to the
Wow.
lemon stand once I retire.
Successful
And
plan.
so I've already put a plan in place.
Wow.
So I put a plan in place that after I
Right.
retire, it will still be there,
Will you still
still
be
be
in
the lemon
Singapore, or do you
stand, and
think you
still
might
be
go back
doing
to
shows.
Canada?
So why would I go back to Canada?
After
It's
19 years
freezing
of the
there.
tropics, you're like, let me go live
It's
6
so
months
cold.
underground in Canada. That would be fantastic. Yeah. Yeah.
If you're in even Vancouver, well, I love Vancouver.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
my wife's parents live in Vancouver. I mean, if I were to go back to Canada, that's the only place. But I mean, I don't want my son lives there. I think my daughter's moving there,
Visit,
so I would
perhaps.
could
Yeah.
be enticed to go there. But to be honest, I mean, I'm a Singaporean now.
Welcome to the
So yeah, why you
club.
say like that?
Have you
I've
got it?
applied for my citizenship.
Oh,
Well,
you
I
have?
did, but
Okay.
now I have to reapply. No, no.
You're doing a lot for the
I have to
community.
reapply.
You're doing a lot.
But
19
I'll
years,
get it.
and you're
One
part of
day I
this
will get it.
comedy history in Singapore. I'm sure that, the heavens will open up and the Wizard of Oz and ICA will wave his magic wand at you. But thank you so much, Lemon, for your time and also being so
I do
generous
understand.
and gracious to have this chat on Comics with Gratitude. I wish you all the best. And yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
And
I
I hope
really
to see you at
appreciate
the
having me
lemon
on.
stand.
You
I'll sign
better.
up in
I'm going to be
November.
holding you to
I'll
that,
sign up
Greta.
in
I
November.
want to see you
It's just
back on
super
the
popular
stage.
now, though. You are very popular, though. You've got like a
Okay.
huge like list of signups now. It's like I look at it and I'm like, oh my god, it's crazy.
I know. And as a matter of fact, the hardest thing is actually taking half of the people who didn't make it. That's why the show we did yesterday was mostly
Didn't
people
make the cut.
who don't get signed up.
Yeah, yeah,
So yeah, but not that they don't make the cut. It's just that I have to look
yeah,
at
yeah.
who's got things coming up and
Yes.
who's developing a new routine and stuff. So some people get sidelined. So on that one last
Oh,
night, I thought
fantastic.
I'm going to put up all the people who are looking for spots, so we make sure we just fill it up with all those people.
It's
And they
amazing.
did a great
Any
job.
stage time
A
for comedian
great
is like
job. It was
gold, you
really
know?
awesome to see.
That sounds amazing. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
All right then.
So anyway, thanks for having me on, Greta. I really appreciate it. And as a matter of fact, when we hit our fifth anniversary, you can
Oh,
have us have
fifth,
me back.
that sounds amazing. Fifth, and then 10th,
That's
and then
2.5 years.
15.
2.5
We'll
years.
continue the conversation for sure.
There you go.
Absolutely. Sipping
And my
pina coladas.
retirement, and then when I'm 80 years old, going, yeah, I'm Lemon from the Lemon
All
Show.
right. Thank you so much, Lemon. I'll speak to you soon again. I'll see you in the club.
All right, thanks.
Bye.
Thanks, will do. Thanks. All right, bye bye.